I genuinely feel like I'm now on some kind of like mission to defend those AFL teams who have been highly criticized of potentially having 2024 AFL draft or trade periods that a lot of people, of course, just don't agree with. Again, I recently made a video talking about St Kilda and how I actually really like their draft, and I tried to justify the reasons why I think it will be a good draft class for them. Of course, now, recently as well, I also did a video talking about the West Coast Eagles and how I feel like not only did they get a bunch of steals in the draft, but they also had a decent trade period, to say the least. And look, I thought, you know what? I've covered a couple teams now like that who've been getting a lot of hate. So I figured let's cover the one who is always in a ton of controversy every year, whether that is the countless controversies that have followed Dodoro over his career with Essendon. But of course now he's not there anymore, so it doesn't really matter. Or even Essendon fans just flat out being sick and tired of their plays. Again, for example, I got a guy who I see coming to work every time, who's the biggest Essendon fan ever, and he has an absolute vendetta against Jake Stringer. Again, I kid you not, when he found out that guy was traded to the GWS Giants, I swear to God, this bloke was doing laps around my workplace and just screaming shit. So in today's video, I'm actually going to try and justify, of course, the reasons why I think Essendon might have had a pretty good draft and trade after all. So again, before we do get into it, there is still a decent amount of you guys who watch these videos who are not yet subscribed to the channel. So it would of course mean a lot to me if you guys could maybe go and leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and maybe even comment in the comment section down below letting me know and telling me what a cutie patootie I am or something, or I don't know what you guys think's going on with Essendon. But I guess without further ado, let's just get straight into it. Of course, the first thing I want to talk about is the controversial trade that the Essendon Football Club did, where they of course traded away their 9th overall pick to the Melbourne Football Club for a future first round pick by Melbourne. Again, when they of course did this, there was a ton of controversy all online. Those who don't really understand the draft and compensation system and how that works heavily went after Essendon because of this whole entire situation. But again, the reason Essendon did it was because obviously they had an academy play going into this draft by the name of Isaac Keiko, who was projected to be a top 13 pick. And with a lot of rumors and speculation going around out there, it was said that a team would most likely prepare to try and match him, or bid on him, I should say, in the top 10, meaning that if a team decided to select him at pick number 8 while Essendon have pick number 9, they would of course lose that number 9th overall pick, probably be given a bunch of other picks later on anyway, but not exactly get their value back. So they decided to bite the bullet and of course trade the pick away for a future first to ensure that they get to keep, again, their first round pick at the end of the day, which will now be going in next year, and they can now get a free first round pick player in Isaac Keiko. Of course, controversy still somehow followed this because Keiko did not get bid on in the top 10. In fact, he got bid on, I think, at about pick 13 by the Richmond Football Club, which means that technically Essendon trading away their first round pick was a really bad idea and was kind of stupid. But of course, we all know the only reasons why teams didn't bid on Keiko is because they knew Essendon didn't have that pick. Again, if Essendon kept their pick, I guarantee you a team was probably going to, of course, bid on him with the 8th overall selection. Now, in saying all of this now, Essendon have done something kind of interesting. They now have 2 first round picks in next year's draft. One of them, of course, being their own, and one of them, of course, being the Melbourne Football Club. Not just that, not only do they hold their 2nd round pick, but they also hold the St Kilda Football Club's future 2nd round pick. Now look, I think this is fantastic by the Bombers. I think anyone who is kind of talking shit about these trades that they did to go into next year's draft, it doesn't really make much sense. Now look, I understand the angle of people saying that they shouldn't have traded this year's first, just because it was like the most deep, AFL draft class we have reportedly seen in quite a while next year's is supposed to be a lot weaker. But in saying that, as we know, they always say the draft class next year is going to be weaker, and then when next year comes along, more and more hype comes up for, and it ends up being a okay or good draft class at the end of the day. Now, I've said this on a channel a couple times, but I genuinely believe if Essendon were going to make the 8, ever, right, in the most recent years, it was going to be 2024. And the reason I say that is because any juice that a lot of those high-end players like Zach Merritt fully had, I thought they were absolutely going to give into this season. They, of course, brought in the 4 free agency and trade players in like Jade Gresham, Todd Goldstein, Ben Mackay, Xavier Dersma. So it looked like it was a really big chance for them to make the 8. But of course, they didn't make the 8, even with a pretty easy schedule. And now they go into next year now, I think, in a really tough situation where I think now Brad Scott knows he has the absolute incentive to play a lot of the kids like Elijah Sardis and Ben Hobbs and Nick Cox and just get games into these guys and see if they do something. So in saying all of that, Essendon are probably going to be a lot worse. I don't think they're going to be, in that 8 to 12 range like they were for the most part of 2024. I genuinely feel like they will probably be in that 11 to 15 type of range. Again, I don't think they'll finish 15th. There's still a small chance. They'll probably be like a 13th to 14th team. But I definitely feel like there's going to be a lot of incentive right now for Brad Scott to play a lot of those younger players and I think change up a couple different things here and there, because right now they're absolutely not moving anywhere. And clearly this looks to be an incentive by the recruiting team, because they've got 4 pretty good picks going into next year's draft. Not only do they have their first round pick, which again should be pretty good because they're projected to not be as good as they were last season, but they have Melbourne's first round pick, who are an absolute anything team right now. Again, there is a chance that the Melbourne Demons do good and finish like 9th or 8th and surprise people, and that pick to Essendon isn't that good. But there's also a chance that Melbourne, with all the issues that they've had with Clayton Oliver and Christian Petrarca and a bunch of other players off the field, and even a Cozzy Pickett not looking like he wants to be there, there's a really massive chance that the Melbourne Demons could finish like 14th, very similar to a type of situation that happened this season. And all of a sudden, you're looking at this of like Essendon finished 13th, maybe Melbourne finished 14th, and the Bombers have now pick 5 and pick 6 in next year's draft, which would go really, really handy to what they're trying to do now, which looks to be most likely playing a lot more of the kids. And I think not starting a rebuild, but trying to rebuild on the run while keeping a lot of these good players that they've got. Again, they also have their 2nd round pick and St Kilda's 2nd round pick. And look, there seems to be a narrative over at St Kilda as well that they'll continue to play a lot of these younger players. They drafted 2 top 10 guys this year, brought in a ruckman later in the draft in an Alex Dodson, and had Josh Battle leave in free agency. There's a chance that they're not the greatest team next season as well, which could very well mean that they have, again, that they have St Kilda's 2nd round pick, which ends up being a decent selection going forward. So Essendon could very well have about 4 or so decent selections next year. And look, we've seen teams like Richmond who have completely just hit the rebuild button and have a ton of players request trades and leave. Again, I don't think that will be the case with Essendon, but I wouldn't be surprised if they had another player who was in like that Jake Stringer category of a little bit of an older guy who's looking for a different opportunity, maybe go and leave to a different team. Again, I'm not too sure who that would be, but it seems like a lot of these teams now are more inclined and more tolerant on trading away players to those contending teams than we've ever seen. So if Essendon are bad and play a lot more of the kids, they could very well have a decent or so player leave, which means they could bring in another selection in next year's draft. Again, a guy like Sam Draper, who I believe is a free agent next year, had a really up and down 2024 with Todd Goldstein coming in and not only like playing better than him, but at times looked like he had kind of taken his spot. And as a 36-year-old ruckman or whatever he is, that is not a good sign for Sam Draper. And look, he's had interest from Adelaide over the last couple of years and has had interest by, you know, some other Victorian teams. So if he was to go to another team, Essendon could very well get in like another late first round pick for a guy like that. And that would be pretty positive because, as I've talked about on this channel, in the top 10 of next year's draft, I believe there's like 2 or 3 ruckmen so far ranked in that top 10, which could very well mean that the Bombers, with one of those really high picks, maybe look to finally finalise and get a really, really good young ruckman to come into this team, and maybe even learn from Todd Goldstein for a little bit if he has another good season and decides to go on for a year. Again, that could be one of the type of players that maybe leaves the football club this year that gives Essendon another pick. Again, I don't think Zach Merritt will be a player. I don't think I really want to hear anyone commenting that down below. I know Zach Merritt had interest from St Kilda, and there were reports saying that the contract they were going to offer him was massive, but I don't think Zach Merritt goes anywhere. I don't think he'll be going to the Saints, but you know, if they do be really bad and St Kilda come with an absolutely insane offer, I mean, yeah, there's every well that it could be looked into, but I just don't think it will be. So again, overall, I thought Essendon did a lot of really interesting things. They traded into next year's draft where they were able to get 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks now, while also being able to select Isaac Keiko in the top 15, who is arguably the best small forward in the draft class, who's going to be able to come in and now play, I think, a lot of games with other young players like Nate Caddy, Ben Hobbs, Elijah Sardis, Nick Cox, etc., etc., and get this young core going for the Bombers right now, and maybe have another bad season or 2. But look, it doesn't look like they're going anywhere anytime soon. They definitely don't have the star power to do anything anytime soon, I don't believe. Yeah, I think this is the perfect direction for Essendon. I really like that they are taking this step back to go forward. But of course, again, I'd very much like to hear all of your thoughts and opinions on this down below. What do you guys think about Essendon and this semi-rebuild on the run that they may be trying to do? Of course, emphasizing playing younger players next year and now hitting the draft. Do you guys think it's a good idea, or do you guys think it's a bad idea? Could a guy like Sam Draper, who's been linked to other clubs, maybe leave as well? Again, let me know all of your thoughts and opinions on this down below. But of course as well, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for latest sports content and news. Subscribe to my gaming channels and my IRL/vlog channel. Links for them will be in the description down below. And I guess I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.